For decades, the dominant economic idea was simple. Let markets decide. Global trade expands. Companies optimize for cost. Governments stay out of the way. But that era is fading. A new one is taking its place. Industrial policy is back. And it's reshaping capital flows, supply chains, and national strategy. Industrial policy means governments actively shaping what gets built, not just through regulation, through subsidies, incentives, restrictions, and strategic investment. The goal isn't only growth, it's resilience, security, and control of critical industries. Why is it returning now? Because modern economies depend on a small number of strategic inputs: chips, energy systems, batteries, defense supply chains, telecommunications, and increasingly, artificial intelligence infrastructure. When shocks hit, countries discovered how exposed they were. A disruption in one region could shut down production everywhere. A shortage of one component could freeze an entire industry. Dependence stopped looking efficient. It started looking risky. So governments began responding. They began funding domestic capacity. They began pushing companies to build locally. They began using trade policy not only for commerce but for strategy. This is why industrial policy is not a temporary phase. It's a structural shift. The world is moving from pure efficiency to strategic resilience. Now, there are three main tools governments use in this new era. First, subsidies and incentives. Governments offer tax credits, grants, and financing support to encourage domestic production. This is especially common in semiconductors, renewable energy, and advanced manufacturing. The logic is straightforward. If a strategic industry is too expensive to build domestically, subsidize it until it exists. Second, restrictions and export controls. Governments limit access to advanced technology or sensitive inputs. This shapes who can build, who can scale, and who can compete. Export controls are industrial policy by another name. They don't just protect technology. They shape competitive outcomes. Third, public investment and procurement. When governments commit to buying from domestic producers, they create demand certainty. That pulls private capital in behind it. Defense procurement is the classic example. But energy and infrastructure are increasingly part of this too. Now, what does this do to the economy? It changes where capital flows. If subsidies exist, factories get built. If incentives exist, supply chains reroute. If procurement is guaranteed, investment becomes less risky. This creates new winners. Regions that capture manufacturing capacity gain jobs and investment. Countries that build strategic industries gain leverage. But there are trade-offs. Industrial policy is rarely the cheapest path. Resilience costs money, redundancy costs money. Domestic production often has higher labor and compliance costs that can raise prices in certain sectors. So industrial policy can be inflationary compared to the old globalization model. Efficiency was deflationary. Strategic resilience can be more expensive. Another consequence is duplication. Multiple countries may build parallel capacity in the same industries. Multiple semiconductor ecosystems, multiple battery supply chains, multiple AI infrastructure clusters. This reduces dependence, but it can also create overcapacity or misallocation. Not all projects will succeed. Some investments will be driven more by politics than economics, so the long-term impact depends on execution. The new industrial policy era will produce winners, but it will also produce waste. Now here's the key macro shift. Industrial policy changes the structure of competition. In the old era, companies competed mainly on cost and product. In the new era, companies compete with policy behind them. Access to subsidies, access to local supply chains, access to protected domestic demand. This becomes part of competitive advantage, and it makes markets less neutral. Industries become shaped by national strategies. This is why the line between economics and geopolitics is fading. Industrial policy is geopolitics in economic form. This is especially visible in AI, because AI is both a commercial opportunity and a strategic capability. Countries want domestic compute, domestic chip supply, domestic data center capacity, domestic talent pipelines. Why? Because AI influences productivity and defense. It influences intelligence systems. It influences economic competitiveness. So governments treat it like a strategic sector. Over the next decade, we'll likely see industrial policy expand further into grid upgrades for power-hungry data centers, incentives for chip manufacturing, rules for data sovereignty, and strategic restrictions on advanced AI exports. This means the AI economy won't be shaped by markets alone. It will be shaped by policy choices. And those choices will influence who captures value. Now, what should you watch? 1. Major subsidy announcements. 2. Export control expansions. 3. Large domestic infrastructure programs tied to strategic industries. 4. Procurement commitments that guarantee demand. These are the signals that industrial policy is actively reshaping investment. The industrial policy era is not a return to central planning. It's a shift in priorities. From cheapest to safest. From fastest to most resilient. From pure market competition to strategic competition. The countries that execute well will build durable advantages. The countries that execute poorly will waste capital. But either way, the rules are changing. Industrial policy is back. And it's rewriting what gets built, where capital flows, and how economic power is distributed.